Welcome everyone to the 2020 Vail Dance Festival Digital Edition. My name is Michael Sean Breeden.
And I'm Rebecca King Ferraro, and we are former ballet dancers with the Miami City Ballet and are currently the hosts of the podcast Conversations on Dance. It is our pleasure to be working with the Vail Dance Festival for our 4th year to bring audiences an inside look into the works that are featured at the festival.
Today we are so lucky that we are joined by one of the festival's most cherished mainstays, Lil Buck. And we will be taking a look back now on Buck's first year at the festival, 2011, where he was artist in residence.
My name is Charles Riley, also known as Lil Buck. Jukin originated in Memphis, Tennessee about 30 years ago. It's just a freestyle-based dance that consists of a lot of footwork, a lot of steps. It started off as one big, just a crunk buck jump, and people back in the days just, making a circle around, running around in a circle, just getting buck. And then it just evolved from people just adding different waves and different steps and ticks and pops, and just made it evolve into Jukin, what you see now. As soon as I wake up, I'm washing my face, brushing my teeth, Jukin, and just, I make it a part of my everyday life now.
So we are lucky enough to have Buck here with us today from LA to talk with us about his career at the Vail Dance Festival, his wide range of projects and collaborations, as well as his important social justice work. So hi, Buck. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming, Buck.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about how you first met Damian Wetzel, the artistic director of the Vail Dance Festival, and how you were first invited to the festival in 2011.
I first met Damian actually in Los Angeles. I had moved out there for a while from Memphis, Tennessee. I'm originally from Memphis. And then my old ballet instructor, the artistic director of my old ballet school that I was at before I moved to LA, Katie Smythe, she contacted me on, she actually sent me a message and said that Damian Wetzel was looking for me. And I was like, who's Damian Wetzel? So, I had to do all this research and everything. But long story short, I met Damian in LA and on Facebook, actually, first. I met him on Facebook. He messaged me and he told me that him and Heather's, they saw this video of me performing the Swan that was up on YouTube when I was, when we did this residency in Arkansas, when the ballet school did its residency in Arkansas. And that was my first time performing the Swan for kids for this outreach program. And him and Heather thought it was just amazing. And he wanted to introduce me to Yo-Yo Ma. So he didn't know I was in LA at the time, but I told him I was in LA and he said that this is perfect. Yo-Yo was actually at the Disney Hall getting ready for a show. So I would love if you can come and meet him. So I went there and I was like, who's Yo-Yo? I didn't know who anyone was. So I went to the Walt Disney Hall, met Yo-Yo Ma, and that's how that whole collaboration happened, you know. But I met Damian from Facebook through that way, and ever since I performed with Yo-Yo Ma, I did, you know, they were working with the President's Committee on the Arts and Humanities, and they did some inner city school things in LA, and I went with them, and they just saw how great I was with the kids. So I think from there, I just started working with Damian ever since. And then eventually he brought me on to the Vail Dance Festival, which was, you know, I've been a long-standing performer there.
So let's talk a little bit more about Jukin, which is a style that you mentioned in the video that we used as our intro. It's something that you've really helped bring to the forefront of dance and to pop culture at large even. What makes Jukin different from other forms of dance, and how did you first come to fall in love with it?
Absolutely. What makes Jukin different from other forms of dance is the history of Jukin, the culture of Jukin, and the bounce. I love to say the bounce, the way that, you know, we get from one place to another rhythmically, and so yeah, like I said before, Jukin is a dance style that's native to Memphis, Tennessee. It originated from Memphis underground rap music. And when I say underground rap music, that means music that's not in the mainstream, that you don't really hear on the radio all the time. You know, you have to like get these tapes that were circulating around them. You know, they had the cassette tapes back then when, you know, they started making Memphis Jukin type of, you know, music and Memphis underground rap music. You had to get these cassette tapes, and they were circulated around the city, and you had to get a hold of them from different DJs like DJ Spanish Fly or DJ Zerk or DJ Squeaky. These guys were making this underground Memphis sound, and this sound had a particular, you know, bass and cadence, and they used these triple hi-hats in this sound that made your whole body just bounce. Not, you know, when you listen to your favorite song and you kind of nod your head like this, but your whole, when you listen to this music, it just made your whole body bounce. It made you want to just run across the floor. So that was something special in that Memphis music and the culture that was coming up in the mid '80s actually, and the music kind of helped birth the dance in a way, because we started moving a certain way when we listened to this music, and it was a full body bounce in the shoulders and the knees, and it went from just us bouncing to the music to guys running, you know, in the clubs they would play this music and us running across the floor in this hype way. And then and then some of the guys wanted to clear the floor, you know, just to get space. So they would kind of do this bounce to kind of get people out the way to clear the floor. And then eventually they'll start making this circle. And we call this circle the G train. So they would make this circle. They would call this, you know, Getting Buck in Memphis, which I kind of adapted my name from, Lil Buck. So they would call this Getting Buck, and we would run around in these circles and create this circle, and then eventually people started hitting the strut, but with this same bounce, right? So that bounce never left anywhere. It never went anywhere from, you know, the mid '80s to now, and the dance just evolved. It just kept evolving as we start seeing and being influenced by different dance styles that we see on Soul Train and things like this, popping, snapping, and hitting. So we would add these different rhythms to the way we move rhythmically already with this bounce, and it helped us create a whole full body movement. And we were predominantly footwork. If I was to describe it, it's like Michael Jackson, you know, it's like a lot of slides and glides, and you see us on our toes sometimes. And yeah, it's just a beautiful dance style.
That seems to be something that I think everyone is always blown away by, especially like, you know, the Vail Dance Festival. You're surrounded by a lot of ballerinas, and like that's what they do all day, but you have that same strength and mobility, and especially the ankle mobility and strength. It's just really mind-blowing. Was that always a feature of Jukin, or is that something that you started to pull out more or explore a little bit more in your own work?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because a lot of people tend to think, you know, I started doing ballet and then I got into Jukin, or, you know, they didn't know the order of it, because they see me on my toes a lot and would think that immediately just, you know, go to the first thing that they know, that, you know, that they see, you know, as far as a dance style like that, which is ballet.
Right.
And And Jookers have always been on their toes.
Mm-hmm.
We just never stayed up that long. You know, some people have, some people haven't. And but we've always been going through glides and getting up on our toes. And for me, and so there's a lot of ankle strength already in the dance style. You'll see that from a lot of different kids right now that's doing the dance style. For me, I wanted to kind of focus on that to when I was coming up learning to dance around 11 years old. I'm 32 now. I wanted to focus on developing my ankle strength and building that stamina to be able to stand on my toes in sneakers, you know, for up to a minute, you know, or more, because that's the way I wanted to separate myself from everyone else. That's the way I wanted to, you know, make what I do special and bring out, you know, the Lil Buck in the style. That's what, because Memphis Jukin is, you know, it has a lot of fundamentals. You know, it's a dance style that you have to learn and get really good at. It's not one of those trendy dances that you can just learn at the snap of a finger. So it takes a lot of work to actually learn this dance style, but it's also, it leaves a lot of room for freestyle as well, for improvisation. So, you know, you have to really use your imagination and see, okay, how can I set myself apart from anyone else doing this? How can I make what I do, you know, shine? And that's what I did. I really focused on, okay, I see some guys, you know, they spin up on their toes and they come back down. I really love that. And I started trying it and it was fun for me. And then I started to realize, okay, I think this is something I can, you know, work on to, I want to be able to stand on my toes longer than these guys. How can I do that? You know, and I started just working that out within myself. And eventually I was able to stay up longer. And that's actually how I was able to get a scholarship to take ballet and become a company member, was because I had already gained all of this strength as a Jooker, as a improv dancer. And I started, I was a part of a hip hop company called Subculture Royalty in Memphis, Tennessee. And we used to rehearse at New Ballet Ensemble before I became a company member there. So we rehearsed there and we were practice, and Katie Smythe would just see us in the rooms just juking and doing all this crazy stuff. And all she saw was second position, fifth position. She just saw all these different ballet positions, and she was just overwhelmed and amazed by it. And that's when she asked me if I wanted to be a company member, and they were giving scholarships to people who really couldn't afford to take class, which I couldn't afford to take ballet class at the time. So it was I thought it was it was a special moment for me, because I didn't want to just grow as a Jooker. I wanted to grow as a dancer individual.
Right. So how do you think, once you started then your ballet training, how do you feel like you were able to incorporate some of those things that you learned in the ballet studio into your Jukin and some of the other things that you felt like you wanted to bring in from different art forms?
Yeah, when I started ballet, and I started to realize and gain a lot of respect for ballet dancers, because they had so much discipline in how they, in their regiment, and how they would come every morning, do bar, do floor work, and just repeat, you know, every day. And also what I use and what I get from ballet is you know, the overall core strength it takes to be able to keep your posture a certain way. When you're doing certain things, like when you're on releve or when you're doing pirouettes, you know, these, you know, toe spins and or, you know, spins on demi. I learned all these different things that I pretty much use in Jukin right now and throughout my dance style. And I think that core strength and how to work my core strength and how to find my balance was and, you know, my equilibrium, and just keep it, you know, there. And, you know, just the fact that I could really work on that was transformative for me, as far as, you know, what you see me doing now on my toes and how long I can, you know, just weave in and out of, you know, and also the grace. In Memphis Jukin, you know, I was a graceful dancer sometimes, you know, but Memphis Jukin was predominantly done to rap music, you know? So when we perform to ballet music and you're taking bar and you have that guy playing the piano, you know, live to like really, you know, and it was a total shift in music and the way they interpret music as well. So I really learned to kind of slow my body down and really, and that helped bring out the grace in me. That helped bring out the mood in me. I always tend to, ask myself, what does it look like when I'm dancing? What does it feel like? And what does it sound like? And whenever I'm dancing, I want to emote whatever the music's, giving out. So it's the same in Memphis Jukin. If we're juking, if this beat is a certain way, we want to be able to emote that beat. If there's somebody rapping on on these lyrics that you're hearing in this rap song, we want to be able to emote that through, like almost pantomime that through our movement. So we kind of, shape shift and transform into this, into whatever the music's delivering. So I wanted to do this. So I just adapted that to ballet. Okay,
right.
The music's really slow. It's really graceful. How can I, adapt that? And I get really, and then I just tons of practice in that way. Just really helped me, it's discover my grace and discover my patience in movement, my patience in dance. And I started to, use that same technique and adapt that to any other dance style that I've learned.
When you're talking about training, I find that interesting, that like what kind of time were you spending in the studios or dancing, doing Jukin? You weren't necessarily, do you take like a class where you work on your technique in the same regimented way? Or is it really more that you're working on choreography all the time and kind of creating different things? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do you work on specific steps,
Absolutely, we do. See, a lot of people think that, as improvisational dancers, we don't, like the training, there's no such thing as training. All those guys can just go out there and do it.
Right.
But that's totally not the case. I wake up every morning. The only thing is we don't have mirrors, or we don't have, teachers like that. You learn from yourself, or you learn from seeing different videos of different guys being circulated, or you learn from dancing with your peers. So what we did is we would come together in groups, and we would dance in parking lots with the car doors open, and that's our training grounds. We literally dance for 8 hours out of the day or more. Like literally, we just bump music all day, and we just dance and feed off each other's movements. Okay, because we all know the fundamentals. Once you get into the style deep, you know about the gangster walk, you know about the L step, you know about the point toe, you know about the push toe. There's so many different fundamentals that we have to train ourselves to get good at first. And then, you start adding those elements of improvisation. So you really do have to train yourself how to do these moves. I had to learn how to do this buck jump that you guys see me do. And it took forever. And it took so long. It was so frustrating, but I finally got it. But you have to learn these different things. And also for me, I would train more than, sometimes you'll see Jookers training more so than any other classroom, class trained person, dancer, because we spend all day and night doing this. There's no time limit. There's no, okay, that you did an hour of, not to take anything away, but there's no, you did an hour of bar, you did an hour of floor work, and now you get to go home. Right. We were dancing in our carports for hours. Then we go link up with our friends and we train more for hours. Then we, even when I'm going grocery shopping, I'm focusing on my feet. I'm thinking about, I'm pushing the cart, really doing these certain glides, or I'm thinking about certain patterns. So it's always a training mentally as well. You're always training mentally as much as you're training physically. And sometimes you can train from 8 to 10 to 12 hours out of a day.
Yeah. I want to go back for a second to the Swan, because I think it's a perfect example of exactly what you were talking about before, the way that you trained and the way that you sort of married all your different trainings, or like would take from one thing and then feed it to the next. So how did this idea then, which I think was probably pretty different at the time, come to put this style of dance to classical music? And then why do you think it got such a big response? The video went viral. It really helped the world kind of fall in love with you. What is it about that particular piece of work that you do that you kind of capture the imagination of so many dance lovers?
It was my time at New Ballet that, like I said, that really that I spent a lot of time dancing to classical music, and I always wanted to show off in class, so I would always try to juke and do juking movements to to classical music in class, and when I was a company member, Katie Smythe, and like I said, we did that outreach program. She asked me, she said, I want to see something. Have you ever heard this song? And she played the Swan for me in the car on the way there. And I said, this is beautiful. And she said, I want to see if you can, if you wouldn't mind just doing a freestyle to this. And I was like, sure, you know me. And I learned the music. We listened to it and I learned it like, I just had to hear it like 4 or 5 times. And then I kind of got the rhythm of it. And that's when I performed it. But then when I performed it with Yo-Yo Ma, there was no choreography prior. I just remembered the music and the cadence of the music. I'm really good at, I have a really good muscle memory for good music. And I just used my muscle memory, and I thought before, I thought like, okay, how would it feel to be a swan in its last moments? What would I want to do? I would want to appreciate the small things around me, and I wanted to bring out the elegance that a swan has when you see that swan floating across the water, and that grace that the swan has. And I think and I adapted that to my performance. If you look in the performance closely, you'll see me just like, spin, and then I'll take notice to a little flower, like just these small little details that I wanted to have. So I pretty much had a basic like outline of or just a concept. I had a concept of the way I wanted to go about the performance, more so than choreography, and I just executed that concept. But I think the performance did well because nobody's seen anything like that. I don't think anybody has seen what they would prefer to as hip hop done that way with classical music, and that married that way. And it was kind of like seeing the best of both worlds. You saw one of the best Jookers and one of the best classical musicians perform together. Yo-Yo Ma is just amazing, and it was the emotion that I think it's also the emotion that we emote through our movement as well. Yo-Yo Ma is one of the most, when I saw him for the first time, I literally told him, the way you emote music is like the way I feel. I mean, we feel, it was a connection. We both feel the music the same way. We both aren't afraid to be vulnerable in the way we emote music, and that passion that we hear and that we feel when we're performing. So I think it was a really good synergy and combination of that that really exploded throughout through the film and just grabbed everyone's heart.
I think this would be a good time to talk a little bit more about how collaboration is something that is just such an integral part of your artistic identity. Your willingness to basically collaborate across any genre, the breadth of the composers or musicians that you work with, or the styles of dance that you have collaborated with. What is it about going so far outside of your own box that you just find so artistically stimulating?
I've just always been a sponge, man. I've always been a sponge, and I've always wanted to, learn. I'll be a little vulnerable with you guys, and just and kind of open. Like I said, there's beauty in that. Always, I grew up in a family of just a single parent. I didn't know my dad till I was 8. It was a lot going on in my household, and when I was younger, I used to. I felt like Memphis Jukin was the one thing I was really good at. I was always trying to find myself, and I couldn't find myself in school like I wanted. So I was always searching to find myself. And I used to grow up thinking that I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't smart enough to do a lot of things. So I would always want to learn from people. When I found Memphis Jukin, this pretty much kind of brought things together for me. And that collaborative thing for me came from, just learning from my peers, because I never grew up with friends like that. My Memphis Jukin community were like some of the first real friends I actually had in my life, and that actually cared about me, that wanted me to learn. So it was through these guys that I've learned from, and I started collaborating with. These are my first true collaborators. These guys, just pretty much taking me under their wing. And when I collaborated with Yo-Yo Ma, and it exploded like that, that's when I realized the power of collaboration, and that it you know, that it really has. It's not just about, you know, me or that person. It's about us bringing what we do, our arts together, you know, our art form together to make something that's bigger than us, and to make a statement that's way bigger than anything that, you know, we can do alone. So it spawned from that, and I just kept that energy going. I always wanted to collaborate with different people to learn new things from them, but they can learn from me as well. And we can make something that's bigger than ourselves, and put it out into the world and inspire people. And I just feel like you can inspire so many people that way. And there's not enough cross collaboration to me. You know, I see a lot of collaboration in the same fields, but there's not enough cross collaboration, you know, that you see out there, honestly, between, you know, like a painter and a dancer, you know, a visual artist and a movement artist, you know, or a composer or anything like that. I don't see enough of that. So I've always wanted to collaborate with different composers or different visual artists or different dancers or people in a whole different, you know, genre of art.
Right.
Let's talk about one of your collaborations with a composer, one that we all love, Caroline Shaw. Let's talk about a particular one that you did with her in 2018 at the Vail Dance Festival. And this was a moment that festival audiences were talking about for days later.
I started working on that piece with Buck the day after I arrived. We started from nothing, and then he showed me this DJ from Memphis who had done this track that had this one riff. It's like da-da, da-da-da, on like a synthesized saxophone. And we took that as the seed to make something.
Maybe a guitar, the electric. Remember that? Down, down, down.
Oh yeah. Trying to kind of work with him to tell the story of him growing up in Memphis, what that means to him and where he is now.
Yeah, grit, grind, passion, all those cycles can build up.
Every step is a downbeat, I really like.
Yeah, every step is a downbeat.
I really want dancers to make music because I think they're so musical, so I gave him some of the tools to make some of the things. So like, here's the line on the keyboard, play this where you think it should be. It's a different way of working for me. I have less control, but it felt really important to both of us to try. It was really special for me too. I really enjoyed it last night. Just looking over at him and seeing him do his thing.
Yeah, so that was.
I gotta watch that again on my own time. That was great.
It was such a big hit at the festival. Like I remember being in the audience with Rebecca and just being so blown away. And
well, we also have a personal story about that music because we just love that music so much. And when we would be you guys would be rehearsing that so late at night,
right?
And we could hear the auditorium from our room, and we would have the windows open at night, and we would be like going to bed and it'd be like, and we would have it stuck in our head all the time, and we just loved it. It was like the anthem of our year. So
anthem of 2018.
Super happy to talk about this.
I hope you didn't lose sleep about that.
No, it haunted us, but in the right way.
In the best ways.
No, but what I love about that clip is it shows how it's not just that you're working with, you happen to be working with a composer on a commission, whatever. You suggested the riff, And then B, you know, I love the moment where you're just like, electric guitar. This should be an electric guitar. Like, you're not just like, okay, you play something and then here I'll do my ditty. Like, it's a truly immersive, collaborative experience that you have. And is that the way you prefer to work in all of your collaborations?
Well, I think it depends. Like, it's like Caroline said, like, I don't mind, you know, not being in control at all in some moments, and just, you know, being, you know, just, you know, letting the movement speak for itself sometimes. And sometimes I would want to, you know, lead as far as like musically. And I think for this one, it was so personal for me. It was something that was so personal to me that, I was just blessed to be able to work with Caroline. She's amazing at how open she was, and, you know, and me adding my, my value other than my movement to the collaboration. And this was so personal to me that in those riffs she was talking about, everything was spawning from, you know, a personal place from home. And I just wanted her to capture that as best as possible, you know? So I just gave her these different ideas, these different suggestions, like that riff for her, that riff, that that is the sound of Memphis to me. There's a song by this DJ called DJ Zerk. It's an explicit song. I don't know if you want to listen to it. It's like one of those Memphis underground rap music, you know, songs. But he has I think you can listen to the instrumental actually from this guy named DJ Fahrenheit, who kind of made an instrumental of it in a way, because there were no instrumentals of it at the time. But the song is called Too Thick, and that horn, that it was just, when I think of Memphis and where I was born and all of it in the sound, if I was to give Memphis a sound, that would be the sound of Memphis. You know, right. It's and that's what I told her. And I always wanted to do something to, you know, to that riff, or kind of, you know, stretch it out and really build something beautiful from that. And I always wanted to show people the beauty of the raw side of Memphis Jukin. You know, a lot of people started to really hone in on, you know, the collaborations that I do through Jukin, you know, and classical music. But I wanted people to understand the real story of Memphis Jukin and the true beauty that I saw in the dance style in its rawest form, you know. And so we kind of built from that. We built from that very raw song, and said, how can we make, you know, just keep expanding on this? And and these are all different sounds that I always wanted to work with and that I'm inspired by. I was inspired by rock music as well, and this is how I got my fast footwork, because I would practice nonstop to these crazy and I like literally I would practice footwork to this and try to be as precise as possible, and so there you see a lot of different elements of like my practices through this music, and it was just great that, you know, she could just, you know, listen and just take that and like, all right, I'll be back. Leave me alone. and she go and do her thing with it. And yeah, it was a great collaboration. It was one of the best.
Let's talk about that process, because things happen very quickly in Vail. It's only, you know, 2 to 3 weeks long. So all of these kind of collaborations only really begin, like Caroline was saying in that video, once you arrive. So what is that like? You guys must have had an initial meeting where you spoke about, you know, your vision, and then she has to go away and create something and then come back. How does that back and forth go?
Well, basically, that's the beauty of Vail, by the way. I just love that. Just being able to jump in and just, you know, get to work, and you have this much time to do it. And, you know, they really get your creative juices going. But as far as me and Caroline, we just, a lot of emails, a lot of me spending time in her kind of, you know, apartment room or whatever. And just a lot of learning each other. Like I was a big fan. First of all, I was a huge fan of Caroline and the way she went about music and her voice. And so I really wanted to use that. And she wanted to use my voice as well in it. And she said it would be a good idea to use your voice. So we just kept going back and forth. We would just task each other out on different things. Okay, if you can come up with something to this sound and and this sound, and if you can stretch that or make that slower and then have it build into something crazy. And then she would give me homework and I would do my homework as far as the voiceovers you heard on there. You heard my own voice on there: passion, drive, grit, grind, all these different things that I think, you know, make up Memphis, Tennessee, and these one-worded, you know, these one-worded things like, you know, grit and grind from, you know, that you know, that's Memphis Grizzlies right there, and that passion that I have for dance, that drive. So all these different things I was thinking of, she just told me to, you know, come up with these words that really sum up Memphis for you and sum up, you know, what you love about, you know, about the dance. So we just, you know, task each other out, gave each other homework. We come back the next day, see what we have, and we just, you know, really just work on it nonstop until we got it right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the work you do, you know, it's not necessarily just going to be straightforward, you know, joy of dance, whatnot. You always have, or you oftentimes have a strong focus on your work and your beliefs in social justice and change, which is a huge part of who you are as an artist. So let's start, before we get into that, let's take a look at a video of another work you did with Caroline last year, which centered on a track that she made about the repeal of the poll tax.
It's a powerful position that voting is the highest form of political expression.
I'm Charles Riley, also known as Lil Buck. I'm here in Vail Dance. This is my 8th year. It's been an amazing journey, and I'm doing the collaboration with Caroline Shaw. It's going to be a powerful piece. I dance because I love it, because it helps my community. It helps make my community better. It helps inspire the community I'm from in Memphis. I dance because it can be used as a tool to help create social change in the world.
Another great piece, collaboration between the two of you that Michael and I just loved. What made you eager to work again with Caroline on this piece, and how did you conceptualize the way that you wanted to tell the story of the repeal of the poll tax?
Well, Damian tasked us out on that, as far as the concept of that, and like. I want to work with Caroline Shaw as much as freaking possible. So anything, like, ever since, you know, we collabed together, I just wanted to do everything with her. I just wanted to be selfish with her. But so yeah, I chose to collaborate with Caroline, and the more I learned about, you know, the 24th Amendment, the more I grew to understand, you know, as far as the music, I mean, as far as the movement that what inspired my movement, it was freedom in a sense. You know, I wanted to have a sense of freedom in my movement, and I wanted to have a sense of struggle to get there. You know, it was and that's what it really took. It took a lot of struggle to get to freedom, to get to you know, to that appeal. And I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to see, okay, what does that look like for me? You know, and so that's how I went about the choreography. I wanted to start off, you know, trying to get to this place, you know, this one place that you know, that'll make, you know, this equality, and then, you know, just you starting to see this struggle to get there, and this and how that feels in my movement, and this kind of like contractual, you know, feeling, and this notion of like slowly breaking out into, you know, into freedom. And that was pretty much my, you know, my inspiration. That piece wasn't that long, but I wanted to make it powerful. And so that's the way I went about it.
So this isn't the only time by any means that you've used dance as a way of pushing forward your thoughts on social justice and change. Can you tell us a little bit about Movement Art Is, which is an organization that you founded with another friend of the festival, John Books?
Absolutely. So John Books and myself, we founded Movement Art Is. It's a company basically we're what we're doing with dance is we're trying to we're storytellers, and at the same time we want to push, you know, dance to a whole nother level visually, and MAI is a company built around, you know, helping creating social change, you know, for the better. And so you see a lot of our films, they touch on different, you know, topics and different truths that happen, you know, that we experience or we know people that has experience you know, in our environments, and just bringing to light these different topics that these hard to talk about topics, you know, like
Right.
you know, police brutality or mass incarceration or you know, missing children's, or like a lot of these different topics that really, and a lot of them that hit home. We want to bring awareness around these through movement and through dance, and in that way through our art. So we started MAI to start, you know, creating these short films to really bring attention to these things, because you know, dance is so much more than just entertainment, right? You know, if you think about Nina Simone, and this is one of our biggest inspirations when it comes to, you know, she has a quote that says, you know, you can't be an artist and not reflect the times, you know. And we always, you know, wanted to reflect what was going on through our movement, and we did that at a very basic level through our freestyles in general. You see a lot of our, you know, you see a lot of our truth, you see a lot of our struggles, you see a lot of what we went through in life through our freestyles. But we really wanted to, you know, stretch that and really show the people, you know, that, you know, this dance can be a tool, not just a form of entertainment, but can be a tool to really you know, help create change, you know, and really shed light on a lot of different important things.
Yeah, and art is inherently political, but dance can sometimes be one of the trickiest forms to relay the artist's political thoughts. So how do you feel that you work to infuse your personal art with your work and your views on social justice?
Well, basically what me and John Bugs, we talk about, you know, these different things that are going on in our lives, and we know it's been tricky, but it's been done. Like if you look at back in the day, like you know, with African Americans, like when it was still segregation, you know, we had to learn how to read, and we had to learn, you know, we had to like really do all these different things on our own, or you know, it was against the law to even do this stuff. And you know, you know, back in the day, they would have dancers to stand outside. It's always been a part of of these political issues in some sense, you know. You had dancers open up for certain speakers of the Black Panthers just to get the crowd around them, for them to be able to speak. You have dancers back in the day that would you know, dance outside of churches when they had certain secret meetings inside to talk about, you know, or to read, to even just, you know, have these reading meetings in there. And then when the dancers start moving around outside, you know, they'll start singing in the church like nothing's happening. And it's always been, you know, been streamlined within these political issues. And what me and Bugs, our process is, as far as how we go about, you know, our personal dances, it's always been in that, you know, it always came from that space. As far as Memphis Jukin, as far as popping, you know, what he does, our dance styles have always been in that space, or came from, you know, that space. And we just really adapted, like I said, our own experiences. Like when we made Color of Reality, that film about police gun violence, it was because we both experienced, you know, we both have people that experienced that. We both, and that could have been us, you know, when we saw what was going on in the world with, you know, police gun violence and police brutality, and how often it was happening. We realized, you know, that could have been us. Every time we look on TV, that could have been, you know, what if that was me? What if that was my little brother? You know, and the way we go about that is, you know, we've always been inspired by, you know, Michael Jackson's and people like this who often would have their dance be you know, be that thing to draw you in, and then have their voices be that political, you know, speak on these political issues and really educate you on that. And so we wanted to do that in our own way, you know, and have our movement. Dance has always been the language. Dance is that language that non-biased language in a sense. You know what I mean? Dance has always been a form of language and communication. So when we're dancing, we're communicating to each other, and it's just one of the most innate things in there. It's like when you're watching dance, you're not listening from up here, but you're listening from in here. It's what I like to say. When you add these different topics, and we collaborate with like spoken word artists on this, so we use visuals on this to really bring out the things that we want to, the issues that we want to, and the messages that we want to share with the world and how we feel about it. And then we just emote that language and speak to you through movement. And when you add these different elements together, they, a lot of people are just, you're allowing them to educate themselves in a way. Like we're not really speaking at you or ranting at you about something to make you react a certain way. When you feel it from us in our movement, then, you're taking it in, you're digesting it, way in a whole different way that makes you think about it when you wake up the next morning, like, wow, what can, and we get that reaction a lot when we perform or when people see our videos. So we know that that's a powerful tool. We know that, dance can be that tool. And that's how we just really go about it through, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
I don't know if I've answered your question.
It makes total sense. And I think, totally it goes back to what you said in the video. It's like what you love about dance is that it's a way to make the community better. It's a tool for social change. But 2020, it's like now we need that more than ever. Obviously, like George Floyd igniting this amazing wave of people being united and standing up and saying like, it's finally truly unacceptable. But you have a voice that through dance, you can also affect change, but on top of this, we're dealing with a pandemic. So it's like, we need you more than ever, but how are you going to find a way to communicate in the way that you always have that is going to be different, but as inspiring in the face of these sort of different obstacles now?
Well, I think that's the beauty of film, and I know I can't perform live for people. I can't go out and do these different things, but that's the whole beauty of film. Like me and Boogs are like really honing in on, our filmmaking skills and what we do best with MAI and telling these stories. John Boogs has some very powerful film coming out, pretty soon that he did. And as well as we've been teasing our little things that we've been doing. And through this pandemic, it's been very hard. But we've been working with people that are, really close and making sure that we work in safe distances as far as like getting these films done. And I think that's the way for us to really speak, right now is digitally and through short film, because, we can't really have too much, we can't have any, personal connection with each other. So we have to, adapt what we do in the best way as possible. And so you'll be seeing a lot of films from me and short films from me coming up soon.
Oh, we can't wait.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Buck, for just speaking with us today. We really enjoyed it. We loved looking back on your many, many years at the Vail Dance Festival, and we will be sure to be watching all of the wonderful repertoire that we will be seeing you featured in at the virtual festival this year.
Thank you, Buck.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. I want to say shout out to Vail. I just love what we do there, and be on the lookout. Like I said, I got some new works coming for y'all that these crazy times have been inspiring me to make. And I think that's just one of the beautiful things that you get out of it. Is just the fact that it gives you time to really hone in on your creativity and work in ways that you wouldn't be, that you originally wouldn't be, wouldn't be comfortable, that you're, that would just challenge you. So, these times are challenging right now, and we're just, we're working through it artistically the best way we can. So
Everyone is adapting, and it's really amazing to see. And it's bringing art to people in ways that they may not have been able to before. And you're able to reach more people and touch more people this way. And we're so looking forward to seeing what you have in store in the future.
100%.
And we'll see you in 2021.
See you in 2021.
Right,
My fingers are
Buck.
crossed. I got everything crossed right now.
I know, right?
Crossed.
Oh, we're all wishing for the best.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know. Well,
All right.
Buck, thanks so much. We really,
Thanks
really
again.
appreciate it. And I know that was great. I was fascinated. Everything you had to say is awesome as always.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank
All
you.
right. We'll
a
talk
good one.
soon. Take care. All right. Bye-bye.